A doctor and a lawyer are talking at a party. Their conversation is constantly interrupted by people describing their ailments and asking the doctor for free medical advice. After an hour of this, the exasperated doctor asks the lawyer, "What do you do to stop people from asking you for legal advice when you're out of the office?" "I give it to them," replies the lawyer, "and then I send them a bill." The doctor is shocked, but agrees to give it a try. The next day, still feeling slightly guilty, the doctor prepares the bills. When he goes to place them in his mailbox, he finds a bill from the lawyer. A 60-year-old millionaire is getting married and throws a big wedding reception. His friends are quite jealous, and in a quiet moment, one of them asks him how did he land such a hot 23-year-old beauty. "Simple," grins the millionaire. "I faked my age." His friends are really amazed and ask him how much he said. "Well," he replied, "I said I was 87. Patty and Murphy are having a pint in the pub when some scuba divers come on the TV. Patty says, "Murphy, why is it them deep-sea divers always sit on the side of the boat with them air tanks on their backs and fall backwards out of the boat?" Murphy thinks for a minute, then says, "That's easy. It's 'cause if they fell forwards, they'd still be in the boat." A man named Donald bought a horse from a farmer for $250. The farmer agreed to deliver the horse the next day. The next day, the farmer drove up to Donald's house and said, "Sorry, son, but I have some bad news. The horse died." Donald replied, "Well then, just give me back my money." The farmer said, "Can't do that. I went and spent it already." Donald said, "Okay, then just bring me the dead horse." The farmer asked, "What you gonna do with him?" Donald said, "I'm going to raffle him off." The farmer said, "You can't raffle off a dead horse." Donald said, "Sure I can. Watch me." A month later, the farmer met up with Donald and asked, "What happened with that dead horse?" Donald said, "I raffled him off. I sold 500 tickets at $5 apiece and made a profit of $2,495. The farmer said, "Didn't anyone complain?" Donald said, "Just the guy who won. So I gave him back his $5. Donald is moving into the White House later this month. A woman comes home early and finds her husband in bed with a girl. She is furious and threatens to kill them both. The husband says, "Believe me, darling, this is just a misunderstanding. I was driving home and saw this young lady trying to catch a ride, so I decided to give her a lift. I asked her where she needed to go, and she told me she wanted to visit some relatives but wasn't sure about their addresses. So I took her home so she could check our phone book. Once there, I saw her dress is pretty ragged, so I decided to give her your old dress. Nearly 2 years that it's been hanging in the closet, and you never wore it. Then I saw her shoes were also about to fall apart, so I gave her your old shoes, which have been doing nothing but collecting dust for 3 years. Of course she said thanks and then asked, "Excuse me, sir, but is there anything else in this house your wife never uses?" Two men are playing golf when one realizes he's left his jacket at the last tee. He goes back to get it, stops halfway, and turns back. "What's up?" asks his mate. "Well, you see those 2 women at the tee, one's my wife, and she's playing with my mistress." His mate laughs and says, "No worries, I'll go get it for you." He stops halfway, comes back, looks at his mate, and says, "Small world." Bob was thrilled when his company gave him a free ticket to the Super Bowl. But his excitement faded when he arrived. His seat was way up in the nosebleeds, closer to the Goodyear blimp than the field. Halfway through the first quarter, he noticed an empty seat 10 rows from the field, right on the 50-yard line. Taking a chance, he snuck down and asked the man sitting next to it, "Excuse me, is anyone sitting here?" The man shook his head. "No." Bob, now grinning from ear to ear, said, "This is unbelievable. Who in their right mind would have a seat this good at the Super Bowl and not use it?" The man sighed. "Well, actually, the seat belongs to me. I was supposed to come with my wife, but she passed away. This is the first Super Bowl we haven't been to together since we got married in 1967. Bob felt terrible. "I'm so sorry, but couldn't you find anyone, a friend or relative, to come with you?" The man shrugged. "Nope. They're all at the funeral. The father, passing through the son's college town late one night on a business trip, thought he would pay a surprise visit to the boy. Arriving at the fraternity house, he knocked on the door. After several minutes of knocking, a sleepy voice drifted down from a second-floor window. "What'd you want? Does Jimmy Duncan live here?" asked the father. "Yeah," replied the voice. "Dump him on the front porch and we'll take care of him in the morning." A woman walked into the kitchen to find her husband stalking around with a fly swatter. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Hunting flies," he responded. "Oh, killing any?" she asked. "Yep, 3 males, 2 females," he replied. Intrigued, she asked. "How can you tell?" he responded. 3 were on a beer can, 2 were on the phone." A woman was in bed with her lover when she heard her husband opening the front door. In a panic, she told her lover, "Hurry. Stand in the corner. Don't move until I tell you to. Just shut your eyes and pretend you're a statue." At the moment, her husband walked into the room. "What's this, honey?" he asked. "Oh, it's just a statue," she replied nonchalantly. "The Smiths bought one for their bedroom. I liked it so much I got one for us, too." They went to sleep, and then around 3 o'clock in the morning, the husband got out of bed, went to the kitchen, and came back with a sandwich and a glass of milk. "Here," he said to the statue. "Eat something. I stood like an idiot at the Smiths for 3 days, and nobody offered me so much as a glass of water." On their way to get married, a young Catholic couple is involved in a fatal car accident. The couple find themselves sitting outside the pearly gates waiting for St. Peter to process them into heaven. While waiting, they begin to wonder, could they possibly get married in heaven? When St. Peter showed up, they asked him. St. Peter said, "I don't know. This is the first time anyone has asked. Let me go find out." And he leaves. The couple sat and waited and waited. 2 months passed, and the couple are still waiting. While waiting, they began to wonder what would happen if it didn't work out. Could you get a divorce in heaven? After yet another month, St. Peter finally returns looking somewhat bedraggled. "Yes," he informs the couple. "You can get married in heaven." "Great," said the couple. "But we were just wondering, what if things don't work out? Could we also get a divorce in heaven?" St. Peter, red-faced with anger, slammed his clipboard onto the ground. "What's wrong?" asked the frightened couple. "Oh, come on," St. Peter shouted. "It took me 3 months to find a priest up here. Do you have any idea how long it'll take me to find a lawyer?" After waiting more than an hour and a half for her date, Melissa decided she had been stood up. She changed from her best dinner dress into her pajamas and slippers, fixed herself snack, and resigned herself to an evening of TV. No sooner had she flopped down in front of the TV than her doorbell rang. There stood her date. He took one look at her and gasped, "I'm 2 hours late, and you're still not ready?" An elderly couple who were childhood sweethearts had married and settled down in their old neighborhood. To celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, they walk down to their old school. There they hold hands as they find the desk they shared and where he had carved, "I love you, Sally." On their way back home, a bag of money falls out of an armored car practically at their feet. She quickly picks it up, and they don't know what to do with it, so they take it home. There, she counts the money, and it's $50,000. The husband says, "We've got to give it back." She says, "Finders keepers," and puts the money back in the bag and hides it up in their attic. The next day, 2 FBI men are going from door to door in the neighborhood looking for the money show up at their home. One knocks on the door and says, "Pardon me, but did either of you find any money that fell out of an armored car yesterday?" She says, "No." The husband says, "She's lying. She hid it up in the attic." She says, "Don't believe him. He's getting senile." But the agents sit the man down and begin to question him. One says, "Tell us the story from the beginning." The old man says, "Well, when Sally and I were walking home from school yesterday." At this, the FBI guy looks at his partner and says, "We're out of here." A mother and her very young son were flying Southwest Airlines from Kansas City to Chicago. The little boy who had been looking out the window turned to his mother and asked, "If big dogs have baby dogs and big cats have baby cats, why don't big airplanes have baby airplanes?" The mother, who couldn't think of an answer, told her son to ask the stewardess. So the boy went down the aisle and asked the stewardess. The stewardess, who was very busy at the time, smiled and said, "Did your mom tell you to ask me?" The boy said, "Yes, she did." "Well, then you go and tell your mother that there are no baby airplanes because Southwest always pulls out on time. Have your mom explain that to you." In a terrible accident at a railroad crossing, a train smashed into a car and pushed it nearly 400 yards down the track. Though no one was killed, the driver took the train company to court. At the trial, the engineer insisted that he had given the driver ample warning by waving his lantern back and forth for nearly a minute. He even stood and convincingly demonstrated how he'd done it. The court believed his story, and the suit was dismissed. "Congratulations," the lawyer said to the engineer when it was over. "You did superbly under cross-examination." "Thanks," he said, "but he sure had me worried." "How's that?" the lawyer asked. "I was afraid he was going to ask if the damned lantern was lit." A friend asked a gentleman how it is that he never married. Replied the gentleman, "Well, I guess I just never met the right woman. I guess I've been looking for the perfect girl." "Oh, come on now," said the friend. "Surely you have met at least one girl that you wanted to marry." "Yes, there was one girl, once. I guess she was the one perfect girl. The only perfect girl I really ever met. She was just the right everything. I really mean that she was the perfect girl for me." "Well, why didn't you marry her?" asked the friend. "She was looking for the perfect man," he said. A professor found himself seated next to a farmer on a train. Feeling bored, the professor decided to suggest a game to make the ride more entertaining. "I'll ask you a question," the professor said. "If you don't know the answer, you give me $5. Then, you ask me a question, and if I don't know the answer, I'll give you $500. Sound good?" The farmer nodded in agreement. The professor started confidently, "What's the distance between the Earth and the Moon?" The farmer thought for a moment, then quietly pulled out $5 and handed it over. Now it was the farmer's turn. He asked, "What animal has 3 legs when climbing a mountain and 4 legs when coming down?" The professor was puzzled. He pondered the question, flipped through his notebook, and tried every logical explanation he could think of, but he was stumped. Finally, he sighed, pulled out $500, and handed it to the farmer. The farmer accepted the money with a smile and leaned back to take a nap. Still curious and unable to let it go, the professor shook the farmer awake. "Wait, what's the answer?" he asked. Without a word, the farmer pulled out $5, handed it to the professor, and went back to sleep. The pastor and his wife were a beloved part of the small-town congregation, always bringing warmth and faith to the community. One Sunday morning, the pastor stood before the church members with a sheepish smile. "Brothers and sisters," he began, clearing his throat, "my wife and I are thrilled to announce that we are expecting another child. That'll make it 7. A ripple of murmurs swept through the pews. The congregation appreciated their pastor's expanding family, but couldn't ignore the strain his growing salary was putting on the church budget. After the service, a meeting was called in the fellowship hall. The atmosphere was tense, with members debating how to handle the situation. "We love the pastor, but we're running out of funds," said Mr. Johnson, the church treasurer. "It's not right to limit God's blessings," added Mrs. Parker, fanning herself dramatically. The voices grew louder and more divided until the pastor himself walked in, a calm smile on his face. "Friends," he said, raising his hand for silence, "I've heard your concerns, and I understand. Children are indeed blessings from above, and I'll gladly welcome as many as the Lord sends our way. However, I've come up with a new plan to ease the burden on our church." The congregation leaned forward, eager to hear his solution. "Starting today, for every additional child we have, I'll take on a new responsibility to serve this community. Whether it's mending fences, tutoring kids after school, or even joining the church choir, I'll work to ensure that each blessing comes with a blessing in return." The room burst into applause. The idea was ingenious, and it reflected the pastor's deep commitment to his flock. But then, from the back of the hall, old Mrs. Thompson, known for her sharp wit, stood up. Her voice, though frail, carried a playful tone. "Pastor," she said with a twinkle in her eye, "that's a fine plan. But if you're taking on all this extra work, maybe you ought to have a second talk with the Lord about quality and quantity." The room erupted in laughter, and even the pastor couldn't help but chuckle. From that day forward, the pastor's family continued to grow, but so did the unity of the congregation. And as the years passed, every new child was not only a blessing but a reminder of the creative solutions and humor that kept their little church thriving.